This is Legal Edge 6. Get ready to immerse yourself in real world law enforcement challenges and evidence based solutions. You belong here, the command center where instructors and supervisors turn the page to expert insights that drive trust and performance in the organizational culture.
The next voice you will hear is fearless and focused, holding you up to your greatness, not your limitations. The mindset shift begins right now.
Welcome back to the Command Center of Legal Ed 6. I am your host, Charles Rambo. Tonight's podcast, episode 5, contains bold language and real-world commentary intended for educational purposes. It, however, is not legal advice. The views expressed tonight are intended to inspire critical thought leadership, accountability, and Title VII compliance in law enforcement agencies. As always, professional and narrative, but tonight, listener discretion is advised. So right now, I want you to take a very deep reflection about how you risk your life every day responding to violent crime, especially the category of sex offenses that deprives a person of their basic humanity. You take the victim's statement, process the assault kit, and pursue the suspect with a sense of justice. But what happens when you return to the precinct and you or a co-worker face a similar violation in the workplace under the cloak of sexual harassment? Unfortunately, today in many agencies, suddenly everyone falls silent. The urgency to report disappears, and the dignity, depending upon who was involved, who cares, so long as nobody got hurt. Wait a minute, can you check the mic? Something's going on with the speaker, because I thought I heard someone say through the podcast, why am I hating on the game? Well, tonight we're not whispering about it. We're not sugarcoating. We're pulling back the curtain on one of the most demeaning events in law enforcement culture, sexual harassment, and confronting the complicit actors who let it thrive. My expert insights come from being a retired law enforcement manager, former law enforcement union executive, and certified instructor, having helped employees file charges of sexual harassment. I also authored sexual harassment curriculum for orientations and supervisory courses. Not only did the straightforward approach hold up under the rigorous depositions and civil trials, this very content that you're hearing tonight was sought by an Arkansas law enforcement agency who needed consultation on sexual harassment prevention in their agency. So with this guidance, tonight we're raising now your expert intuition through the lens of a reasonable person expectation that when they come to work, they're coming to make a living. But we understand that human dynamics can also bring about consensual relationships based upon dignity and mutual choice. Unfortunately, that line of dignity too often is crossed when a coworker or a supervisor initiates unwanted and unwelcome behaviors of coercion, pressure for sexual favors beneath every standard of dignity. So yes, right now I can even feel the vibration right here through this podcast that you're saying, well, we do training every year to educate the workforce. And I'll ask you, why do we still have occurrences? Yes, even with your agency's best intention, you still get the test of civil liability. Why? Because some individual or collective group is going to act with deliberate indifference to try to overcome someone's reasonable expectation to privacy and to be left alone in the workplace. Why is there such a great interference with an officer trying to perform their law enforcement, corrections, investigative, and court duties that serve the public and not the whim and caprices of some coworker or supervisor who has an inordinate appetite for seeking sexual favor? So please forgive me in advance for my passion, but let's break it down further. Sexual harassment in law enforcement just isn't inappropriate behavior. Today, it's a weaponized abuse of authority, a toxic blend of entitlement and intimidation. This type of behavior comes into two actionable categories of sexual harassment: quid pro quo, otherwise known as tangible employment action, in a supervisory and employee capacity. You want weekends off? Then dinner with sex at a cheap motel or across the desk, it isn't optional. And hostile work environment, particularly among employees of the same rank, engaged in acts or comments that make the work environment so uncomfortable to perform, watch this, essential duties that are critical to the public safety. So let's dig in deeper, because if we put those two categories of sexual harassment under the lens of neuroscience, both quid pro quo and hostile work environment, it would be linked to the dominance behavioral system, that which fuels status-seeking aggression and control. And if left unchecked, it will become a pattern and practice of predatory work behaviors where nobody wants to work in your toxic agency. So again, please forgive me in advance if that analysis is touching a nerve. But today, even more neurologically clear, sexual harassment in law enforcement cultures is like playing Russian roulette. You're touching unseen emotional triggers of a person's life experience. And when those triggers get pulled, the response might come from the same caliber of a weapon that you carry on your hip, with the consequences turning into a crime scene. Like the Virginia officer who shot his supervisor over alleged overt sexually harassing conduct. You can take it or let it alone. But real headlines, real departments, real careers destroyed, like in Oklahoma City, a uniformed officer used traffic stops to sexually assault marginalized women. Or in New York City, a lieutenant who flashed more than just his badge, and the city revoked their legal defense mid-deposition. These were not isolated incidents. These were power moves enabled by silence and negligence. So ask yourself right now, if someone pulled that kind of dominance behavior on the dignity of your daughter or son, your wife or husband, your father or mother, would you sit there and still think that's just the day in the life of that law enforcement culture? We had to apply that same litmus test to our agency when a prominent newspaper quoted a group of employees from within that stated that the agency's environment was equivalent to a modern Sodom and Gomorrah. Not only did it hurt our reputation in the community, it was taking a devastating toll on morale within inside of the agency. And that's where our CompStat model became more than just tracking statistics in the control meeting. It now became under key performance indicators of tracking those unwanted and unwelcome behaviors that were reported to supervisors, and what were you doing about it? Who were those particular actors, and what did you do to correct or remediate the behavior through progressive discipline? Yes, it took its toll, and those numbers began to fall. And when the numbers began to fall in sexual harassment complaints, you should have seen how it impacted employee morale in getting on board to the mission of helping to bring the jail from up under a federal consent decree order. That's where we're talking about getting involved, 3 thoughts and 3 steps ahead of sexual harassment before it takes a devastating toll on your agency. So let's invite you to success based upon the rule of law when you open your leadership neurons. Under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, sexual harassment is legally recognized as sex discrimination. It matters not the intent of the harasser, but more about the impact on the victim. And while many may say that sexual harassment isn't about sex but power, let's get real. It was the power that took something away that can never be regained, the power of choice and a loss of self-dignity. Unfortunately, these were the dark realities that women faced in the workplace and made sexual harassment only actionable under what was known as the reasonable woman standard. However, the United States Supreme Court, in its ruling on Cal versus Sundowner, made it actionable under the reasonable person standard, making it very crystal clear. Men cannot harass men, men cannot harass women. Women cannot harass other women, and women cannot harass men in the workplace. That's why from 2009 to 2016, our CompStat approach helped to fight sexual harassment under the theme that silence was not an option, especially when we emphasized that submitting to sexual favors in the workplace was not a core competency that was listed in your job description or performance review. Why? When unchecked sexual harassment festers inside of your organization, it can cause unsafe workplaces, social media scandals, career implosions, lawsuits that can lower your local governing authority's bond rating, loss of talent within inside of the agency, but most critical, there is a decline in the public's trust in the delivery of services that are essential to their public safety. And this is the reason why real leaders at every level of the organization, regardless of rank, must not become complicit in an incident of sexual harassment. Get ahead of the threat by protecting the victim, the organization, and yes, the accused, because false allegations and exonerations deserve equal attention and consideration. And so, as we're moving towards the conclusion of this podcast, here are 5 real world tools that every level of the organization can use to hold the line on zero tolerance for sexual harassment. Number 1, say it and mean it that no means no. The same as if a victim of a sex crime would assert non-consent in protecting their dignity and their boundary. Number 2, report the harassment immediately. That's what you would encourage of a victim in a sex crime, so please follow your own advice. Number 3, understand the unseen theory of sexual harassment. That is, that even if unwanted and unwelcome conduct is not directed at a particular person, if they were in proximity of sight and sound, it becomes third-party harassment that is actionable for complaint. Number 4, consensual relationships. As we identified at the beginning of this podcast, we understand that human behaviors will bring about consensual relationships. However, keep your private life private. What you do in the privacy of your home and off-duty time is your business, and it doesn't belong in the work culture. And number 5, yes, I've said it before and I'll say it again with decency and order. Please stop weaponizing your sexuality as currency in the workplace. If you're using it for the proximity of sexual favor to cover for poor performance, off days, or promotions, understand that you're not just compromising yourself, you're lowering the value on organizational excellence. Most cutthroat in this process is that you're seizing opportunity from others who deserve upward mobility based upon merit. So I beseech and beg you to please find the same value and merit through upward mobility in your chosen profession, and not to the whim and caprices of a supervisor who is hell-bent on you getting with this in order to get with that. When you feel that your boundary has been crossed, what should you do? Please file. Don't second guess. Don't minimize. Whether it's your local governing authority, EEO division, or the federal EEOC. The law is clear that you have the right to file a charge. But let's be clear, the goal is not always about a paycheck. It's about stopping the harassing behavior. Local agencies may give you 30 to 60 days, and the federal EEOC will give you 180 to 300 days. But most critical to the process of filing a charge of sexual harassment does not always lie with the victim. It lies with the inaction of the supervisor, who could be held accountable under vicarious liability. You either act or let your silence become complicit in the award of damages that certainly will come to you in your official and individual capacity. So in closing, here's the hard truth about sexual harassment. It's not a training issue, and it's not just how things are done in the organization. It's a leadership test of how everyone, grown adults who carry guns for a living, respect each other's dignity in the agency. And if your agency is prepared not to confront sexual harassment with zero tolerance, guess what? It probably isn't prepared to serve a diverse community in the 21st century in the delivery of agency services. That's why right now in this podcast, I'm giving you the opportunity to download the free manual, Silence is Not an Option, for instructors, supervisors, and command staff to take more proactive steps in eradicating sexual harassment in their agencies. You can also enroll in our court-tested, post-certified course, where you can earn 4 hours of Georgia Post credit or is reciprocated through your state's Post Council. Learn more about our one-on-one or cohort training sessions at criminaljusticelearning.online. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Please join us next week in our final episode as we dive deep into instructional systems design, a 21st century look at neuroscience and AI-based training. A must-attend for instructors and field training officers who want to take their curriculum to a whole new level of student engagement and legal defensibility. I am Charles Rambo, and I'll see you in the command center.